Excellent. So we're just going to dive right in. So the first topic we have today is Jamie Dimon put out a shareholder newsletter last week, and I think it's got some really relevant talking points on real estate, banking in general, and his thoughts on the economy are, I would say, pessimistic at best. So with that, we'll dive right in. So, just to summarize, Jamie spends a lot of his shareholder letter talking about how geopolitical events are going to shape the economy for 2025 and beyond. Trade wars, real wars, inflation, they're all concerning. He warns that stagflation is a real concern and that a recession is on the table. I was in college during the financial crisis. I was studying architecture, and my professor told me to go get a different degree. Needless to say, I didn't have a real job and wasn't thinking too far past saving enough for my beer fund. So, does it feel like 2008? Do we think Jamie's concerns are a real thing?
It doesn't to me. I was in the title business in 2008, and it was a different time in the sense that you could feel the froth in the market. I mean, you could feel it. I remember reading an article in Fortune magazine about a guy who was flying from LA every weekend, renting a Cadillac in Phoenix. He had two cell phones. He was driving around basically buying every house he could with 100% financing or 80% on the first mortgage, 20% on the second, making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, whatever it was, way more than I was making as a title agent, like beating my brains out doing closings, trying to get stuff done. And I was thinking, I'm a dummy. I had a buddy who was a lawyer at a large law firm in downtown Cleveland, and he called me and he said, I just read about a woman in Southern California who made $1 million last year doing home equity lines. Like, why did we go to law school? It was just like upside down world. Nothing made sense. And we would get, when someone is buying a house, people would buy a house with no money down, and their biggest question at the closing, and they would be getting $2,000 or $3,000 as part of the closing, so they would get buy a house, get a check. Their biggest question was, when can I pick up my check? And you're saying to yourself, are they buying a house because they want to get $2,000? It just didn't make sense. So we're so far ahead of the great financial crisis in my mind. I don't know what the future is going to hold, but it's not going to be the housing market is not going to be negatively impacted, famous last words, like it was in the great financial crisis, just because of everything we've learned from them and the unwillingness of lenders to allow that type of leverage in the marketplace.
Do we think maybe with inflation being a concern, that maybe affordability is something that's going to maybe impact the market more than it did last time?
I mean, affordability, we're still so far above where we were. Before COVID, home prices have appreciated so much. Affordability is definitely going to be an issue. And, we see people coming in with buying houses on a 30-year loan at rates between, 6.5 and low sevens is what we're typically seeing. So, the cost is to the consumer is far more than it was when rates were half of that, but people are still buying houses. Most people have two incomes. They know exactly what they're getting into. Affordability is going to be an issue due to lack of housing and lack of starts and just a long-term under building of housing in the United States. That's not going to get fixed anytime soon, unfortunately. But I don't think that these other externalities are necessarily going to impact our housing as much as just the lack of housing. I mean, tariffs, I don't know what's going to happen. I know they've been up, they've been down. Now it's just China that's going to have this huge tariff, so they're not going to import anything to the United States, I guess. That's all going to raise prices to the consumer, as Jamie Dimon says in his letter.
So it sounds like in some ways, if you can afford a house, there's capital that you can get a loan for, and it's different than 2008. It still impacts housing, but not in the same ways or as impactfully. One of the areas that we, as we talk to different title office is around the affordability. It becomes, there's less transactions, so title offices that are looking to either maintain or gain market share have to put more effort into finding that style of work. I imagine that may be different from 2007, before 2008. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, it was just so different. I mean, anybody could buy a house, and everybody was buying houses, and it wasn't always good. I mean, I had several clients, and I saw them go up the ladder. They buy 2 a month, and they had the whole goal and the strategy and everything, and then they gave them all back to the bank, or they all went through foreclosure, and it was terrible, because I mean, there were many different types of loans. It's hard to remember. I mean, people would buy a house with first and a second. The first, let's say the first was at 5%, but they would pay interest only for the first 2 years. Then they would amortize the entire principal over the last 28 years. And the second was at like 12 or 13%. So if the whole key to the purchase in 2006 or 7 was you were going to get 4 to 5% home price appreciation, you could refi out or sell that property. And when that didn't happen and the values dropped, and you owed $120,000 on a house that's now worth $105,000, there was no reason to continue to make those payments, because you were never going to get it was such a long horizon to where you would be you would no longer be underwater. And so, I mean, it was easy to get a loan, but it was hard to pay that back when you didn't know exactly what the payment schedule was going to be, because it was an adjustable rate loan, or and there was any number of options. There was a thing called the pay option arm that was the best definition I heard of it. It's like a steak knife. If you grab it by the right end, it works well, but if you grab it by the other end, it draws blood. So I mean, it's not really comparable, but it's a problem of a different sort in my mind.
One of the things I was going to add, and then happy to share the mic here, is around the Jamie Dimon letter. And I'm a big fan. I spent 13 years at JP Morgan in tech, and am a shareholder, so I do appreciate Jamie Dimon. And I speak at times to innovators and entrepreneurs, and I use one of his quotes, which was around having a healthy disrespect for authority. I feel like he does a great job of kind of going down the middle. He finds a way, I think, to speak to both sides of the parties. And reading through this, it gave me some degree of confidence, because I think what he describes is what I can generally resonate with. And it's often these days in the news or radio or wherever you get your information, it's very polarizing. And I appreciated the kind of the depth of his understanding of global markets, and how, yes, we should be concerned, and the things that I feel concerned about, he's concerned about. But he also had a aspect of hope, around that this is a great country, and that I felt like he summarized well a lot of how I feel, which makes at least the first 3 paragraphs recommended reading.